My parents gave me up for adoption. Because I was a boy, 20 years later, they want me to pay for my sister's education. Hey, I'm a 25-year-old guy, and my story really kicks off from when I was just a kid, around 6. Though honestly, it sort of starts the day I was born. I'm the youngest of 3 siblings, and since my family wasn't exactly rolling in dough, my folks had to be pretty savvy with their money to raise all of us. We lived in this small town in an old family house that saved us tons on rent, and my grandparents owned a farm, which kept our kitchen stocked, so that was a huge help. My dad was a truck driver, so he'd be gone for 3 or 4 days at a stretch, and my mom worked as a waitress to keep things going at home. By the time I came along, my parents already had 2 daughters, and let's just say I wasn't exactly in the plan. I got that loud and clear later on. I grew up slowly piecing together the fact that I was the oops kid. Turns out my parents seriously considered not having me, but the doctor warned them it could be risky for my mom's health, so they went ahead. My mom had been hoping for another girl, probably because it would be easier to pass down my sister's clothes instead of buying new ones. My sisters were super close in age, so they just swapped clothes all the time. It was no big deal for them, but then, surprise, I was born a boy, and let's just say that didn't go over well. They were seriously bummed, and even dressed me in my sister's hand-me-downs, including girls' uniforms for school. Yeah, no kidding, I was teased pretty badly for that. As a kid, I didn't really get all the harsh words thrown my way, and when I finally started understanding them, I was pretty hurt. My dad was sort of neutral at times, but he was away a lot, so he didn't intervene much. My mom, though, was a different story. It was like walking on shells around her. I wasn't exactly an angel. I acted out once I realized how unfairly I was being treated compared to my sisters, who pretty much got the best of everything. One day, after being super bullied and then coming home to find new clothes for my sisters, I snapped. I literally turned them into confetti with a pair of scissors. Not my finest moment, but I was just a kid trying to deal with a lot of hurt. Instead of trying to understand why I did it, my parents decided it was time to put me up for adoption. They waited for someone to take me, but that didn't happen, which just fueled their anger towards me. I overheard some pretty painful things, like my mom saying she wished she had known my gender beforehand. It was rough. Eventually, my dad found a couple in the next town who wanted to adopt me. They weren't well off, but they really wanted a kid. So, after some discussion, it was settled. My parents were relieved to see me go, which stung. I was scared but too numb to even cry, really. The next day, I was driven out to meet my new family, Mary and John. Their place was small, and they converted a storage room for me, which was already a step up since I never had my own room before. Over time, Mary and John proved to be really loving people. At first, I was skeptical, thinking they'd just toss me aside eventually, too. But they never did. They even worked extra hard to save up for my school fees the next year, which is when I realized they genuinely cared. My life turned around for the better after being adopted, even though my biological parents never reached out again. I guess it was their loss, because Mary and John are amazing people who made me feel like I belonged. So, when I was left on my own while they were working, I could watch everything from my bedroom window. Eventually, I started spending my days on the truck, helping out wherever I could. Once I got into school, I put my energy into studying, but still helped with chores whenever I had some free time. I was just a little over 10 when I started helping John on the cash counter, and I was pretty good at numbers. This early experience taught me a lot about business and accounting. After finishing high school, I was all set to dive into running their business full-time, but John and Mary insisted I go to college first. They even paid for it with their savings. They were getting older, and I wanted to take care of them the way they took care of me. but they were adamant that I pursue my education. So, I went to college for business and accounting, determined to become an entrepreneur. My graduation day was one of the happiest days of my life. John and Mary were thrilled and even invited my biological parents to the ceremony, but they didn't show up. Once I graduated, I was ready to take over the food van and let Mary and John enjoy their retirement. But they had something else in mind. They'd saved up a nice chunk of money and handed it over to me. I was blown away by their gesture. John said they could manage for a while longer without dragging me into it, and he wanted me to start my own business. I didn't want to waste their hard-earned money, so I used my business know-how to find a small local eatery with potential. After some effort and several rejections, I convinced the owner to lease it to me on a profit-sharing model. I revamped the place, updated the menu to appeal to millennials and Gen Z, and focused on giving top-notch service. In just a year, sales skyrocketed, and I doubled the initial investment. Fast forward 4 years, and I'm successfully running 3 cafes in town. I even helped upgrade Mary and John to a nicer apartment and got a small place for myself, since I'd been living with them until now. I suggested they retire the food truck and enjoy their golden years, but they insisted on keeping it going for the joy it brought them. When I moved out, suitcase in hand, I never imagined I'd be a college grad running restaurant chains. Time flew, and last month I had a surprise visitor. While I was busy at the cash counter of one of the cafes, I saw a familiar face. It was my biological father, who I hadn't seen in almost 2 decades. He looked older and weaker, but walked over with a big smile and hugged me. I didn't say much since there were customers around, and I took him aside. Seeing him brought back a flood of childhood memories, ones I wouldn't have revisited if it weren't for this encounter. He said he was proud of my success and mentioned meeting John, who filled him in on my ventures. He also said he'd bring my mom over the weekend. That day, I didn't know how to react, so I just stood there silently. After work, I told John I wasn't eager to meet my biological parents, who'd left me just because I was a boy. They knew about my tough childhood, and I even considered running away to avoid the weekend meeting, but Mary convinced me to forgive and move on. I agreed to meet them if John and Mary were there with me. When my biological parents came to John's house, I expected an apology. Instead, they started listing all the favors they'd done for me. My mom said I should be grateful they found such great parents for me who raised me right. I was shocked, and though I wanted to snap back, Mary calmed me down. I diplomatically expressed how blessed I felt to have John and Mary as my parents. That meeting was so awkward. The next day, my biological mom called, and it took me a moment to recognize her voice. It was the first time she'd called in 20 years. She was asking for money, saying Dad lost his full-time job and was now doing contract work, and she was out of work too. They were struggling, and she needed $20,000 to pay back friends who'd helped them with groceries. I said I'd think about it. I felt conflicted. Even though I resented them, I didn't want them to suffer financially while I could help. But part of me wondered if they were just using me. After talking with Mary and John and thinking long and hard about it, I decided to take a leap of faith, just this once, and sent her the money. A week later, Mom called again, thanking me. Then she said my sisters wanted to meet up. That hit me in the feels, thinking maybe my family really wanted me back. I've always been bitter about my parents for what they did, but I never held anything against my sisters. I told Mom we could meet on Sunday and that I'd drive to them. But she suggested meeting somewhere else, and that's where we left it. So, I didn't really overthink it when she said she'd send the location and time details later, but after hanging up, I felt kind of uneasy. Why didn't she want me to visit at their place? I mean, meeting up with family after years. Wouldn't you imagine doing that at home instead of some random restaurant? But yeah, she texted me the details, And wow, it was one of the swankiest spots in town. I didn't dwell on it much at that moment because I was stuck on the fact that they didn't invite me to their place. I got to the restaurant and my sisters were already there. They rushed over to hug me, and for a moment I was genuinely happy to see them after so long. Things were going great as we were catching up until they started looking through the menu. They went Saint rate for the most expensive stuff, and when they asked Dad what he wanted, he just grinned and said, "Order the most expensive thing. My son's a big shot now." That was so petty. Had John or Mary said that, I'd have felt proud. But coming from my biological parents, it was just mean. There wasn't much I could do, just sat there watching them eat while my wallet cried. I even considered ghosting them before the bill came, but that seemed a bit too extreme. Right then and there, I promised myself not to fall into their emotional traps again. I was cold for the rest of the evening, but I doubt they noticed. When leaving, they didn't invite me back home. Instead, my older sister asked, "Where are we dining next?" I just faked a smile and said, "Nowhere," then waved goodbye. Back home, I told Mary about my greedy family. She was shocked, but she's always been kind and independent, and found the whole situation disturbing. She wisely advised me to stop being a fool and focus on my life. I took her advice to heart. My sisters called a week later, but I didn't pick up, nor did I when my mother called. It's been 2 months, and they've stopped trying to contact me. Guess they got the hint I didn't want them in my life. So, update 2. Thanks everyone for the support. Like I mentioned earlier, I stopped responding to my sisters and biological parents because I realized they only wanted me for my money. Fast forward about 5 months, one of them called me out of the blue. I answered, and she started with some small talk about me and my work, but it all sounded fake and over the top. I just cut to the chase and asked what she wanted. She sighed and told me my sisters had to drop out of college because Dad couldn't cover the fees, and they needed me to pay for their education. I lost it. She tried to calm me down, saying my sisters are family, and I should help them. I was at work and didn't want to mess up my day, so I hung up. She called in the evening, and I ignored it at first, but it was bugging me. I figured ignoring wasn't the solution, so when she called again, I answered. She asked how we should handle the payment and suggested I send the entire amount to her for the tuition. I was like, "Whoa, hold on, I'm not paying anything." She was stunned because she didn't expect a no from me. She asked if I'd at least pay in installments, but I repeated that I wasn't going to pay at all. My sister's education isn't my responsibility, especially since my parents abandoned me and have never cared. They're only reaching out now to mooch off my money. She got so angry, reminding me they gave birth to me and found a good guardian for me, and now it's my turn to support them. But I had my own thoughts. I owe everything to John and Mary, my real mom and dad, who lovingly supported me. For my biological parents, I don't owe them anything, and they don't mean anything to me now. She kept yelling, but I coolly said, "Wrong number," and hung up. Call me selfish or cruel, but there's no way I'm wasting my hard-earned money on people who didn't raise me. They ditched me when I was 6, and for those wondering why I refer to John and Mary by name instead of calling them Mom and Dad, I actually do call them Mom and Dad. I only refer to their names here for clarity. They're my true parents, and my biological folks mean nothing to me. Moving on, let me tell you about the next story. I discovered my wife cheated on me with some guy she met at a convention. So, I decided to expose them both. We got married about 5 years ago, and we hit it off right away, bonding over nerdy stuff like gaming and anime. She was everything to me. We met at a convention and fell in love fast, getting married just 3 years after. Our wedding was super nerdy, with everyone dressed up in costumes. But with our busy jobs and expenses, we couldn't attend conventions often. For our 5-year anniversary, I wanted to do something special. So, Here's the scoop. I wasn't exactly rolling in dough, but I was making just enough to keep things comfortable. As a surprise birthday treat for my wife, I snagged tickets to this epic Comic-Con, the kind that people would kill to attend. She was over the moon, and I was stoked to go with her. Now, I gotta admit, I've always been oblivious when it comes to women. Seriously, I never know when they're into me until way after the fact. Even with my wife, it took 3 lengthy Discord chats to clue in that she was trying to get my attention. Anyway, once we got to the convention, everything was awesome. There was this chick dressed as Slave Princess Leia who couldn't stop gushing about my last-minute stormtrooper outfit. After she left, my wife pulled me aside and pointed out how the Leia wannabe was all over me. Honestly, I was totally clueless about it. I'm just not great at picking up on stuff like that. My wife was a bit annoyed, but we just rolled with it because we had 3 days to enjoy there. So during one of the meetups, this dude dressed as Han Solo showed up. My wife, who was also rocking a Princess Leia costume, started chatting him up. They seemed to hit it off, and I had to step in and introduce myself as her husband. The guy said nice to meet you and all, but wouldn't look me in the eye. Later, I brought it up with my wife, and she insisted it was no big deal. She just loved talking about Star Wars. I let it slide, thinking maybe I was just overthinking things. The next day, my wife woke up feeling sick and worn out. I left her to rest and headed back to the convention. But I couldn't shake off what had happened the night before. Still, I brushed it off as my imagination. But while I was there, she stopped responding to my messages. We had another day to go before the event ended, so I picked up a little something for her, hoping to surprise her later. When I got back to the hotel, there were these strange sounds coming from our room, like moans and stuff. At first I shrugged it off, thinking my wife was just feeling a bit better. But when I opened the door, her expression said it all. She had definitely done something. I confronted her, but she insisted nothing happened. I looked around, but found no one. I tried to chalk it up to nothing and dismissed it. The rest of the convention passed, but things got weird between us. My wife became distant, working late hours and always looking exhausted. I suggested watching a movie together, but she kept saying she was busy. I couldn't forget those sounds I'd heard. One day, I noticed her Discord notifications were turned off, which was strange because she'd never done that before. Curiosity got the better of me, and I checked her phone. Surprised to find the passcode was still the same. What I found were messages from the guy at the Star Wars meetup. They were flirty, exchanging pictures, and talking about role-playing together. I was fuming, but pretended like I didn't see anything when she asked if I was okay. I started planning for a divorce, though I knew serving her would be tricky. I wanted to expose her betrayal. I told her about another convention and pretended I couldn't make it, but she could go. He seemed interested, even if it meant going solo. She was someone I thought I'd be with forever, but it felt like a punch to the gut. When the day came, I stuck to my plan. I did some digging and found out she and the guy worked pretty closely together. I went to the convention, spotted them hanging out near her favorite voice actors. I put on a mask to stay incognito and watched them closely. When they shared a kiss, I jumped in between them, dramatically pulling off my mask. She looked stunned as I confronted her, laying out the Discord messages as proof. People around were shocked, and I didn't hold back. I called her out for cheating with the guy she'd met at a convention. Even the celebrity there needed a break from the drama. My wife was in tears, begging me to listen, but I couldn't. She tried talking about wanting an open relationship, but I was done. I got my stuff, moved to a hotel, and contacted a lawyer to start the divorce process. She kept trying to convince me to stay, suggesting an open relationship where we could see other people. But that was never what I wanted. She was my partner, my player too. Someone recorded our confrontation, and it blew up on social media. Eventually, I went through with the divorce, got the house, but sold it because I couldn't bear the memories. I don't know what happened to her, but the whole nerd scene knew about it, and it caused quite a stir online for a while. Her boss might have found out too, but honestly, I couldn't care less. I'm still on the hunt for love, but definitely not with someone who cheated.